Thank you, Rita. On Spotlight tonight, £250,000 saved by keeping people out of A&E. It's a new way of working which is paying dividends and helping patients feel cared for.
It's made so much difference in my life. I no longer feel like a number. I actually feel like a person.
Also on the programme this evening, dismay over a dispute delaying necessary roadworks.
I'm in Dartmouth, where this collapsed wall has meant this road has been closed for almost a year. The residents just above, if they want to drive into town now, they have to go more than 4 miles.
Once a nightclub hotspot, we're on Plymouth's Union Street, where businesses are quite literally growing.
There was a humpback whale off the coast of Newquay here yesterday, and wildlife experts are saying sightings are definitely on the up.
And I've come here to find out about paddle and why it's now become the fastest growing sport in the UK.
A pilot project to reduce pressure on emergency departments in the southwest is being hailed a success. The scheme in Somerset has been offering extra help to patients who attend A&E frequently. In its first year, it has halved the number of visits made by patients it supports and saved the NHS tens of thousands of pounds. And one patient told our reporter Matthew Hill the scheme made her feel like a person again.
This is a day's worth of medication.
How many tablets is that?
42 a day.
Gail Hodges relies on a cocktail of drugs to keep various conditions at bay. Living with dystonia, fibromyalgia and osteoporosis meant she used to end up in Yeovil's A&E twice a week. Gail is classified by the NHS as a high-intensity user, which means she comes to A&E more than 10 times every 3 months.
I was at the end of my tether of, I don't want to be here anymore because I can't do what I wanted to do.
I believe she was seen by a specialist up in London.
But over the past year, patients like her are regularly discussed by a team of medical and social care staff and then supported more at home.
They reassured me, they helped me, and that's made so much difference in my life. I no longer feel like a number. I actually feel like a person, and that's down to them.
In its first year, 141 patients who are frequent users of emergency departments have taken part in this scheme, and it's led to a 48% reduction in use by this group. Not only that, it's saved money, £250,000 in the first 6 months.
An older lady we were working with a while ago was attending A&E about 4 or 5 times a week, and lots of it was to do with difficulties between the landlord and care services, and the lady was falling over her access to her house. So my Ubuntu service simply found a grant and built a ramp for her, and that stopped her attendances overnight.
And for this busy A&E in Yeovil, staff are already noticing an impact.
The high-intensity users are a challenge, so they're often very complex medical and mental health problems that the needs are perhaps not best met from an emergency department, which is why this new service obviously is invaluable from our point of view, as we are experiencing significant winter pressures at the moment.
As the NHS does its best to deal with huge demand, it's schemes that keep patients like Gail away from our hospitals that could make a huge difference. Matthew Hill, BBC Spotlight.
Well, meanwhile, millions of pounds announced for improvements to Torbay Hospital's emergency department has been welcomed as a shot in the arm by the Deputy Medical Director of the Trust. The money from the National Adult Care Transformation and Innovation Fund will be used to build a new wraparound extension for the department. It means extra space for assessment and specialist triage, receiving ambulances and same-day emergency care. Building work is planned to be finished by the end of this year.
I'm immensely grateful to our very skilled and dedicated workforce that are working often in very difficult circumstances, and our patients and their families and the community see that. This investment's a real shot in the arm in terms of the estate offer, in terms of the environment that patients are seen and assessed and treated in, but also the environment that our staff and dedicated colleagues are working in.
Well, good news there for Torbay's emergency department, but there are much bigger projects that hospitals are waiting to hear about. Our political editor Martin Oates joins us now, and Torbay is one hospital waiting for an announcement.
Yes, so imminently we're expecting the government's final decision on Boris Johnson's 2019 pledge to build 40 new hospitals. You may remember that. Now, specifically for us in the southwest, that meant almost all of our major hospitals being promised either a total or partial rebuild. So specifically, North Devon District Hospital, Torbay Hospital, Musgrove Park in Taunton, Derriford Hospital here in Plymouth, and the Royal Cornwall Hospital in Truro.
So what's been happening since the present government got into power?
Well, in September, the present government announced a review which it said aims to consider the options for putting the new hospital programme onto a realistic, deliverable and affordable basis. Now, this review was requested by the Chancellor and the Health Secretary. The key individual there, I think, is the Chancellor. A reminder, as with so much the government's doing and saying, they say this is against the background of very challenged finances. To be clear, it's not as if this was going entirely smoothly under the last government. 6 months before the election, the Commons Health Select Committee produced a report in which they said, we are extremely concerned by the lack of progress the new hospital programme has made in the 3 years since its creation.
Has anywhere actually got the funding so far?
Yes, there's already one bit of good news here in the region, and that's in Dorset. So the Dorset County Hospital has been awarded £100 million from the new hospital programme. That is going into a new emergency department and critical care unit. Work is already underway there, and apparently the expectation is to be completed in 2027.
Discussing that on Sunday, Politics South West.
Health, the latest on devolution and the call for better rail services.
Lovely stuff. Martin, thank you very much. A Devon Health Trust says it's responded immediately to concerns raised by a coroner about patients prescribed a powerful drug for schizophrenia. This week, an inquest heard how William Northcott died of a heart attack in Torbay in July 2021. He'd been under the care of the Devon Partnership NHS Trust. In the last few hours, the Trust has confirmed that anyone attending a clinic for the drug clozapine will be asked additional red flag questions in relation to cardiac problems. John Henderson has more.
3.5 years ago, William Northcott died suddenly of a heart attack. He was taking a drug called clozapine for schizophrenia. He'd suffered side effects such as putting on weight and had sore wrists.
I couldn't comprehend it. I couldn't comprehend it. And my memory of that day was the most beautiful sunny day. And I just sat in the darkest part of the garage because I thought, if Wim can't see the sun, nor can I.
A week-long inquest into William's death has been focusing on the monitoring of the drug. Today, Assistant Coroner Louise Wiltshire said she was concerned about cardiac monitoring.
The inquest heard that William had a significantly enlarged heart. It weighed 590 grams, much higher than the average male.
William was living at this care home in Torquay and came under the mental health care of Devon Partnership NHS Trust. Hours after the coroner's conclusion, the Trust issued a statement. It said people attending clozapine clinics are already asked a number of wide-ranging questions about their physical and mental health, but following the inquest, they will now be asked additional red flag questions in relation to potential cardiac problems.
William would not fit in any box, and that was where he was always going to be.
Mr. Northcott's family have lobbied healthcare professionals to adopt William's protocol to help clinicians ensure safer monitoring of clozapine.
I believe that if we can make sure that those checks are embedded into the system, specifically the cardiac side effects, we've got a chance of Wim's death saving lives.
John Henderson, BBC Spotlight, County Hall in Exeter.
Residents are calling for immediate action to right a road which has been closed to traffic for a year due to a landslip. Warfleet Road in Dartmouth is currently a 4-mile drive from the town for residents and emergency vehicles, even though it's just a short walk away. The delay has been caused because of a dispute between Devon County Council and a local landowner over who is responsible for it. John Ayres has more.
This wall and road collapsed in February last year, leaving a hole that's too dangerous to drive around. The delay to get it fixed has left residents fuming.
It causes tremendous inconvenience to residents, to businesses, to contractors, to deliveries, and more importantly to emergency services. And we know of 1 or 2 incidents where ambulances couldn't get to people in the area very easily.
Initially we thought it would just probably be a couple of months, and it dragged on and on. Unfortunately, we have been given no information by the council, which is outrageous. So it's all been rumour. So we haven't known. There was a rumour that the work was starting in October, and that didn't happen, and people were becoming exasperated.
The delay, it would appear, is due to a dispute over who's responsible for the repair. The council says it doesn't own the wall. It is the responsibility of the landowner and their insurers to deal with this, and that the road cannot be fixed until the wall is fixed.
We don't care who's responsible for it, whether it's Devon County Council or whether it's a private landowner. If it's privately owned, which counties say it is, then they need to come in, put the workmen in here, rebuild the wall, and then put those charges onto the landowner, and they have to then prove that is the case.
Each bit of this wall is apparently owned by the property it overlooks. The insurers for Chris Chambers, the owner of this part of the wall, believes the responsibility lies with the council.
The reason the wall has failed is because the road was in such a poor condition. Anyway, it's the road that has caused the wall to fail.
For now, it would seem a stalemate. John Ayres, BBC Spotlight, Dartmouth.
Now they can weigh up to 40 tonnes and be as long as 17 metres. The humpback whale is huge, and if your emails are anything to go by, they are being spotted more and more off our southwest coast. So are they becoming more common here, and if so, why? Well, Tamsin Melville has been to Newquay to chat to marine expert Bex Allen from the Cornwall Wildlife Trust.
So there was a humpback whale here off Newquay yesterday.
Yes, it's incredible, isn't it? It was just here in the bay, and apparently there were sightings throughout the day. It travelled over to Watergate and was seen almost in the surf there.
And we're seeing more at the moment.
I believe we are. I mean, the sightings in the winter months have gone through the roof in the last few years. Certainly a lot more than we used to see. We are getting it in our surveys as well. So we ran a programme called Sequest Southwest, which is getting people engaged with the wonderful marine megafauna around the coast. And we're actually seeing humpback records appearing in those surveys, and that's a much more indication that things have changed because you've got those effort-based survey data.
Why is it we're seeing more humpback whales?
Well, one of the reasons is it's a great recovery story of this century. The numbers are starting to come back up, so maybe they're exploring their old hunting grounds. But there is a lot of food around here, and these whales are busy feeding, so we're thinking they're feeding up before they finish their migration further south.
It's obviously becoming more common, but still really exciting.
Oh, it's so exciting. This is my hometown, and I just never would have dreamt in a million years that we'd get humpbacks in Newquay Bay. It's amazing.
And also other sort of hotspots, as it were, around Cornwall as well.
Yes, so we're seeing them in St Ives, Mounts Bay, and also Isles of Scilly. But I do think you've got a good chance of seeing them from almost anywhere around the coast.
It's my 50th birthday week, so I took the week off of work to spend the whole week looking for wildlife.
Did you see the humpback whale yesterday?
I managed finally. It was just as it was getting dark, and it's like, is that a rock with a tortoise on it? No, I think that is actually a humpback whale. So yes, I've finally seen it, yeah.
Have you seen one before?
Yes, I've seen it last year, over Whipsonderry.
What's so special about it?
It's just brilliant, isn't it?
We have now got social media, and as soon as someone sees one, everyone knows about it.
Yeah.
Obviously that's great, but does it also come with its risks?
It does. I mean, what we would love people to do is really, enjoy these animals. And watching them from the coast, you can't really do any harm. But there is the risk when they're in the water, and especially when they're doing behaviours that's really crucial to them, like feeding, that we could interrupt those behaviours. So for water users, we'd really love it if people could respect them and give them their space.
Well, unfortunately, we haven't got to see a whale here today, but if you are lucky enough to see one, the Cornwall Wildlife Trust would like to hear from you as they build up a record of sightings. Tamsin Melville, BBC Spotlight, Newquay.
And more stories still to come tonight, but in other news across the southwest this evening, police have launched a murder investigation after the death of a woman in Newton Poppleford. Officers were called to a report of concern for welfare at an address on Lark Rise. A 70-year-old woman was pronounced dead at the scene. A 67-year-old man from the Newton Poppleford area has been arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in police custody. Apologies for those pictures there. A new study says the railway linking the southwest to London is sorely in need of investment to offset the cancellation of major road projects. The government halted a planned tunnel for the A303 past Stonehenge within weeks of winning the general election last year. It said the £2 billion scheme was poor value for money. The new study recommends improving the railway line through Salisbury, which runs parallel to the road. Around 30 firefighters tackled a blaze on a coach in Plymouth. The blaze broke out yesterday afternoon in Honecknoll. Officers say the cause of the fire was accidental. Police evacuated a nearby building just as a precaution. Now, I bet there are a fair few stories out there of nights spent on Plymouth's Union Street. Email them to us. Famous or possibly infamous for its crowded pubs and clubs. But now that story is changing. A former nightclub has found a new lease of life as a mushroom farm. And as Kevin Hay reports, there are plans to use the building to grow even more businesses.
Union Street was the beating heart of Plymouth's nightlife. But times and tastes change. Many once thriving pubs and clubs are closed. That's where the Nudge project comes in. The community-based initiative is bringing derelict buildings here back into use. This former nightclub, its latest purchase.
So we're inside C103 or JFK's, depending on how old you are. It was an old nightclub. You can see the bus here, which was where people got cocktails and shots.
Once the building is refurbished, there'll be space for a variety of small business ventures, including a hydroponic farm, growing herbs on the old dance floor. A bold idea, but sometimes that's what's needed to bring about change.
There's a lot of excitement and people really enjoy coming in and exploring it. So the way that Nudge works is that we bring people into the building early on. We have all sorts of opportunities for people to come in and see what it's like now, and then they see the change and the progress that starts to happen.
Some parts of the building need less work than others. The basement, for example, is already an ideal home for a mushroom farm.
This is where the mushrooms start their life. We've got various different bags at different stages of inoculation here.
I never would have thought it was a possibility. Early 2000s, Union Street was just chock full of people. It was busy every night. It's all changed, obviously. So it's good that these spaces are getting repurposed into something that provides the community and benefits many people.
Across the road is another Nudge project, the former YMCA building, now rebranded as The Plot, home to a number of small businesses. Dominic Lines lives on Union Street and says reopening these buildings is improving the community.
Just seeing the place change and grow because of Nudge and The Plot here and over the road, it's great to see that it's become a more friendlier and enjoyable environment to be in.
All this work is costing hundreds of thousands of pounds, which comes from various redevelopment grants and private investors. With around a quarter of the buildings here standing empty, it'll take a lot of work and imagination to put Union Street back on the map. Kevin Hay, BBC Spotlight, Plymouth.
And you can hear more about the project and the buildings Nudge are working to bring back to life on BBC Sounds. Just search for Secret Devon and you'll find a series, Union Street, that takes you on a tour of 5 buildings, including the mushroom farm, which I have to say looks rather interesting. Now, time for the sport now, and a game that was invented more than 50 years ago but is seeing a huge rise in popularity. Paddle is best described as a cross between tennis and squash, and Devon is about to see the launch of its first ever competitive league. Here's Andy Burkett.
Well, I've come here just outside Exeter to find out what all the fuss is about this sport called paddle. In a moment, we're going to chat to a couple of the guys here, but first, a quick look at what else is going on this weekend.
Starting in Australia, where Plymouth cricketer Heather Knight's hopes of leading England to Ashes glory are hanging by a thread after her side were beaten again in the third and final one-day international. England must now win all 3 T20 games and the Test match to win the series.
I guess we've been here before, haven't we? The last Ashes series was 6-0, and yeah, look, the next game's going to be really, really key, obviously, and try and put in a really big performance in Sydney. But yeah, we're still alive, we're still in it, and we've got to keep believing we can.
Plymouth Argyle's new head coach goes in search of his first win in charge of the Pilgrims. They take on QPR at Home Park tomorrow lunchtime. Still 3 points adrift from safety at the foot of the table.
It is tough, no doubt. The situation is tough. I'm completely aware of this. But I was also very, very keen and very, very confident when I took this decision. It's a challenging one, but it's not impossible. And if we can maximize over the next weeks and months everything outside the squad, and I'm normally good at this, maximizing and getting everything out, we can do this. And that's the message.
Elsewhere, Exeter City face a tough trip to League One leaders Birmingham. The weekend's rugby gets underway this evening, and with the Exeter Chiefs all but out of Europe, Paul Brown-Bampo was one of only 3 players who played Bordeaux last weekend, making the trip to Ulster for their Champions Cup tie. The Chiefs women will be keen to get back to winning ways at Loughborough on Sunday, and the Cornish Pirates return to action for the first time in 2025, and they're away at Hartpury. Now, back to the sport that will soon be having league fixtures of its own.
Paddle is such an addictive game, I think. It's because it's so easy to have so many good rallies right from the very beginning.
This is Devon's first paddle ambassador, having taken up the sport after a lifetime of playing squash.
My body was starting to groan and tweak a little bit, so I started to play paddle when the courts opened in Plymouth 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, and instantly loved it. I was instantly addicted to the point where I actually retired from playing squash and I haven't walked on court since.
And it's not just Jonathan who's got the paddle bug.
It's fair to say you're hooked.
I am hooked at the moment, yeah, it's fair to say. I bought a racket.
Would you class yourself as a sporty bloke in general?
Yes, but racket sports not so much. More rugby, these like brute force.
I played tennis since I was like 9, definitely similarities, but in terms of like a social sport and a different game, it's exciting, it's fun, and it's easily accessible, so that's why I like it, definitely.
It doesn't matter whether you've played loads of different ball sports before and therefore you can come in and you've got a quite high level to start with, or whether you are not very mobile, not very good, kind of a slightly older person and can have a very nice, comfortable hit around with your friends still, and you'll still enjoy it just as much.
Was he calling me old there? Anyway.
It's quite easy to see that the game is a cross between tennis and squash, but the rackets, no strings here. I have to say, it reminds me of playing swing ball in the garden.
Having seen the number of courts increase from 3 to more than 20 in just 2 years, Jonathan thinks it's time for Devon to be served by a proper competition.
Sent in an application which is about to be approved to have the first ever Devon Paddle League, an inter-club league. It will be one of the first in the country. There are a few already, and it will comprise of 4 or 5 clubs to start with that will have home and away matches at the different clubs around Devon, culminating in, obviously, at the end of the season interval, a winner.
Andy Burkitt, BBC Spotlight, near Exeter.
An altar cross stolen more than a year ago from a church near Bodmin has been returned. It had been missing for so long people living in St Breward didn't think it would ever be seen again. Here's Christine Butler.
St Breward Church in Cornwall, said to be the highest church in the county. Paddy McShee and Jeremy Hooper are the church wardens. Let Jeremy tell you what happened on the 25th of June 2023.
At the end of the service, I put the altar brasses away and the Bibles and the Gospel, and closed the cupboard, but forgot to put the padlock in it, and that was what actually happened.
It wasn't until the following week that I went to the cupboard to put out the cross and candlesticks, etc., and found that we were a cross missing.
It was the biggest upset in St Breward for years. I mean, appeals had gone out for it.
Yes, there had been a notice in the community news and all the rest of it, but I didn't expect to see it again, frankly.
Fast forward to last month, and Paddy picks up the story.
Came up here for a funeral service to put out the cross and candlesticks, and I tried to open the door and couldn't, and looked down, and lo and behold, there was a candlestick shoved up against the door that I couldn't unlock it. I couldn't believe it. It was in a bit of a state, like it had been in a hedge, but so pleased that it was there. I called the vicar, who was here as well, Robin, and he came and, wow, we were both so pleased to see it again.
The cross has reappeared as the centrepiece of the church altar. At night, it's in a safe place. Christine Butler, BBC Spotlight, St Breward Church.
We like a mystery. But not when it comes to the weather. We like to know exactly what's going on, David.
Yeah, we've got another quiet one, actually. Thank you, Victoria. Good. Hello, good evening. Yes, the weather's not too dramatic this weekend. We've had a lot of cloud today, and that cloud's been pretty extensive, with a few places seeing the sunshine. And again, it was the far north of Devon and the north coast of Somerset that had some sunshine this morning. It's clouded over now, and that cloud's a bit stubborn over the next 24 hours. Cloud will feature in our weather forecast. Hopefully a little bit of sunshine, a few breaks here and there. It's a dry weekend, and we've had that cloud a bit stubborn to move away from some coastal areas, but even inland we've had a few breaks. This is Dorset with a beautiful Weather Watchers pictures. You can see some breaks in the cloud in the distance, and that's the story for this weekend. It's going to still feel quite cold though, and a bit misty in places too. Late in the day on Sunday, more especially Sunday night into Monday, there might be a few showers out of a weak weather front that's trying to come in off the Atlantic. But its progress is very slow indeed, because we've got this area of high pressure. It is stubborn. It's holding on. It'll hold on for most of Saturday and Sunday before finally it releases its grip, and these weather fronts will gradually move towards us. But pretty slow progress on that, has to be said. This is Sunday, still out across the western side of Ireland. By Monday, the ridge of high pressure is re-establishing itself, so that weather front will be across us, but a pretty weak affair. A more definite change by the middle of the week as we see this area of low pressure starting to come up from the southwest. That will bring milder air, but also much more unsettled weather at the same time. Tonight, though, the cloud is fairly thick initially, but it will break later on tonight to allow a few pockets of mist, fog, and also a touch of frost here and there. Quite a range of temperatures. Lowest, I think, 2 or 3 degrees. Most of us 5 to 7 degrees, the minimum. And tomorrow is another day, another grey day for many of us, but there will be, I think, more holes in the cloud. Some winter sunshine every now and then. It's going to come and go, that cloud. Temperatures probably getting up to about 7 or 8 for most of us. The mildest places will be the further west you are. So Penzance 10, St Mary's will be around 10 degrees as well. Certainly one of the warmest places across southern parts of Britain for the weekend. The forecasts for the times of high water, Plymouth 8:24 and 20:47. The winds are light, again from the south or the southeast, no more than 3 or 4. Late in the evening tomorrow and into Sunday, perhaps a bit more of a breeze developing across the Isles of Scilly. And the surf still good, but smaller waves, north coast 3 to 4 feet and clean. And the outlook is for some dry-ish weather into the start of next week, but from Wednesday it is much more unsettled. Have a nice weekend. Victoria.
Thank you, David. Nice quiet weekend in store. I hope you've got the same. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. If you'd like to email us with a story, please do so. But from all of us here, have a lovely weekend. Good night.